All right, everyone, welcome back into another NFL DFS video. Going to be breaking down the three-game slate here on Thanksgiving, giving you guys my favorite core plays, the players I'll be looking at lineup process-wise, maybe where we can get some good value plays, giving you guys my first look build, as well as giving you guys the optimal build here for this three-game slate. Let's go ahead and get into it. And so starting with the core plays, I do think going with one of the three or two of the three top-end running backs is going to be the way to go here on this slate, whether it be Devon Achane going against Green Bay. He's just someone that has had a very high floor lately, especially since Tua has been back as the quarterback. That offense has just been back to normal, and so I do expect him to continue to play well. Has a nice high floor built in because of his receptions as well. Like, we should be able to lock in at least 5 points from his production in the receiving game. Not sure the matchup with Green Bay was very elite at the start of the year, has kind of fallen off a little bit here, but I'm not too worried about that. I do think he's going to be one of the top plays. I also do think Jahmyr Gibbs, especially if David Montgomery is out, he is easily going to be the highest owned player, I would say, on this slate, but that's because he's going to be the best play on this slate as well. When David Montgomery left the game last week after getting injured, Jahmyr Gibbs saw 88% of the snaps after that injury. And we just see the workload that he had: 21 carries in that game, 3 receptions, just a very high floor, a lot of production, a lot of opportunities there in this matchup going against Chicago, a game in which they're favored by 10 points to win, which seems pretty crazy to me, honestly. But at the same time, if they're going to be winning by that many points, that would mean Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be getting a lot of work in this game, and that's a play that I want to be going out of my way to target. I do think that Josh Jacobs, depending on if you play Jordan Love at quarterback or not, Josh Jacobs would be a core play to me. So, like, all things equal, I would consider Josh Jacobs a core play. But you guys are going to see later on in this video, quarterback is a little bit more difficult than I would like. But I do think Josh Jacobs is a phenomenal play. I would argue he's probably a better play than Devon Achane, just given the fact that the Packers are the favorites to win this game by 3.5 points currently. And if that happens, I think we can lock in his workload a little bit more. This is a pretty high-scoring game as well. And if we look at the 9-to-5 cheat sheet here, guys, these are going to be the top 3 plays that we're going to see popping up in there. All of them over 2x return on value. All of them are going to be pretty high owned as well. All of them, just in smash spots. So from there, let's go ahead now and jump on into the receiver position. To me, guys, I'm going to be going with one receiver the most, and that's going to be CeeDee Lamb. I really like the price discount that we're getting between him and ASB. Chicago has been pretty good at stopping opposing receivers as well, whereas the New York Giants have not been. And I just really think that this is a strong matchup, and I do like the idea of paying up for CeeDee Lamb. In 2 games now with Cooper Rush as his quarterback, he's seen 12 targets in both those games, has had a very nice high floor as well, hasn't scored a touchdown either, and you would argue this is another very solid matchup for him. And so I like the price discount there. I think we're going to be locking in at least 15 fantasy points there. And then from there, tight end wise, for a core play for me, I'm going to be going with Tucker Kraft. Looking at it, guys, he's like the one play that's probably a little bit too cheap given his upside. Sure, he's a little bit touchdown dependent, but he's a tight end play that does give us the upside to potentially go for 20 points at 3.7. And that's pretty encouraging to me. Given the fact that Romeo Doubs is also going to be out in this matchup, he's going to be a decent red zone threat. So if Josh Jacobs maybe isn't scoring a bunch of rushing touchdowns, Tucker Kraft could easily find himself scoring a touchdown. So these are the plays that I'm building my lineups around. And again, Josh Jacobs is going to be in there as well. Now let's just go ahead and get into the rest of the slate here and get into those thoughts. So again, Josh Jacobs, I do think we're going to be playing him. But from there, running back wise, Tyrone Tracy is certainly going to be interesting. He is someone that fumbled last week, saw his snaps go down a significant amount. We actually saw Devin Singletary get a decent amount of work in this game. Obviously, if you're playing GPPs, you want to get a good mixture of both of those two players. If you're playing single entry or cash type contests, I personally feel like that fumble has now clouded the situation enough for me to be a little bit hesitant to get to either of them. Granted, they're both going to be good GPP plays. Obviously, we'd be be trying to get to Tyrone Tracy Jr. first. If it wasn't for last week, he would be a core play, but he didn't get the work. He had not the best game. He still got 10 fantasy points in that game, don't get me wrong, but the snaps were down. And it's not like Devin Singletary has looked bad. That could be the excuse to finally get Devin Singletary some more work. So a little bit concerned about that. I would actually rather get to Rico Dowdle, who saw 64% of the snaps last week. And that was kind of refreshing to me because Mike McCarthy has said they wanted to treat him as the workhorse back a bunch of times already this season. Coming in off of the bye week is that's something that they mentioned as well. it's just like, all right, do it then. Like, what are you waiting for? And we finally saw that happen last week. 19 carries, 86 rush yards, 3 targets, 3 receptions. Very good stuff there from him. He actually saw 22 out of the 26 RB opportunities for the Dallas Cowboys as well, which is pretty solid. We obviously like that there. So Rico is going to be a good value. I do think we're going to be getting around 10 fantasy points out of him. And again, just going back to the 9-to-5 cheat sheet here, guys, he's going to be one of the better values on this slate. So if we look at it, he's the second best value running back play on the slate. So obviously projected to be a pretty good value there. And then from there, let's jump into the receiver position, because that's where it does get more difficult. Malik Neighbors is in a good spot, but I can't really justify paying up for Malik Neighbors that much when you get Wendell Robinson at 4.7. He has had such a nice high floor. The volume's been there for him, getting around 5 targets per game, and really just getting like 2 to 3 manufactured touches to him in the game, which has created a nice floor for him as well. 4.7, such a cheap price tag. I do think he's a play that we should be trying to target. Now, Tommy DeVito is a massive downgrade from Daniel Jones. Does worry me a decent amount, but this isn't a bad matchup. And so I do think getting to one of those two is not a terrible idea. The issue that I have on this slate is that the Chicago Bears receivers are all in good spots, and they're all going to be in a spot in which the game script should favor a pass-heavy script. That's where I'm going to be struggling to get to DeAndre Swift. That's why I want to get to probably 1, maybe 2 of the Chicago Bears pass catchers. So we see DJ Moore has only saw 7 targets the last 2 games since the new offensive coordinator has taken over. And guys, the offense has looked so much better lately over the past 2 games. Caleb Williams is getting the ball fast, and they're also giving Caleb Williams some design rushes, which has helped relieve some of the pressure, has also kept the defenses honest as well. And so it's just a more basic playbook, but it's what they should have been doing all along. But I mentioned DJ Moore only getting 7 targets, and that's because Keenan Allen 15 and 8 the last 2 weeks. And then you look at Rome Odunze, he has also had a lot of targets there, 10 and 10. Now, they're all playing a lot of snaps as well. My issue is that they all do kind of feel the same, but at the same time, if we were getting DJ Moore at 5.6, I will say I want to be getting to DJ Moore the most out of them. I could argue we could be playing Odunze or Keenan Allen there as well. They're both in good spots. For me, guys, Detroit, Jameson Williams just feels like a GPP only type play. He does have the upside to really go off. We know that. For Dallas, they are going to probably get Brandon Cooks back, which means Jalen Tolbert probably not going to be an option for us. Miami, I do think Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill at their price tags are certainly intriguing. I would only be playing one of them, not both of them in my builds. And then again, I do think it's worth calling out. Romeo Doubs is out. And so we look at the pricing on Jayden Reed. That's extremely low. I would expect him to at least get a few manufactured touches, which really hasn't happened as frequently as it was at the start of the season. But we've got to remember at the start of the season what happened. One, the Romeo Doubs stuff was kind of going on. He sat out 1 game. Christian Watson was a little bit banged up there as well. And so we really saw Doubs or Reed get thrust into a bigger workload, whereas when everyone has been healthy, they haven't needed him as much. It's pretty much as simple as that. And so he's a fine play, great price tag. I think Christian Watson, great GPP play there as well. He should have had a massive touchdown. He dropped it. He was wide open, dropped it. That's terrible. But the play was there. And obviously, if he catches that, that's like probably a 12-point play, I would say. And so, again, he's someone we could be looking at just given the fact that Dobbs is going to be out. And then Dontavian Wicks, pretty solid there as well. So he's going to be someone that gets a little bit more snaps with Dobbs out as well. We could look at, like, if you're in a pinch, like I wouldn't hate going to Heath or potentially going to Melton. Like, Heath will probably be the receiver number 4. Melton will get some work in there as well. Obviously, you're trying to get lucky with a random touchdown there at that point. Tight end wise, it is a little bit more difficult. The reason why I like to get to Tucker Kraft is because, well, Sam Laporta, he's been not good. Let's just put it that way. Like, I would rather just go with Tucker Kraft, who's been better, and honestly, you could argue has looked better than Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta was in a perfect scenario last year, and Ben Johnson really exploited that scenario for Sam Laporta to really go off and do well. He hasn't had to go off and have a big role thus far this year, and so I don't want to bet on that finally happen this week, especially with Jameson Williams back now. Jonnu Smith is fine. He has had a bigger role. I get why he's this high priced. I personally don't want to chase that. Now, I will, like in GPPs, I will have some exposure to him. Not a lot. He's not terrible. But again, at that price, I would rather get to Tucker Kraft. And then for what's worth, guys, Cole Kmet has been playing a bunch. A lot of targets for him last week as well. And then Luke Schoonmaker as well. Got a touchdown on just a terrible defensive play, broken play for the defense. You take that away, really not a good game. But with Jake Ferguson out, he has been the tight end number 1 there. Only playing about 50 to 65% of the snaps, which you'd want it to be more. But he's solid. And then the one value tight end play that I do like, that I'm fine getting to, I just worry about the upside, is going to be Theo Johnson. So honestly, if you're not paying up for Tucker Kraft, I think I will be going with Theo Johnson. Again, really like the price tag for him. He should be good to go. I'm not too worried about the injury. He has been the leading snap getter, although the snaps have come down slightly lately. He has had a nice high floor, though, catching 3 passes over the last 4 games, which has been great. If we can get 6 fantasy points out of a guy at 2.9, I will take that. So you guys have noticed I have not touched on the quarterbacks yet, and obviously that was by design. I really hate the fact that the top 4 quarterbacks on the slate all are getting seemingly difficult matchups. You look at Jared Goff, I honestly don't know why he's the highest priced player on the slate. He barely ever goes off, right? We look at this game log, 27, 28, and then 37, okay? He's had 2 really good games. The rest have been busts. And so, yeah, you can get exposure to him. You could maybe play Jared Goff, maybe Jahmyr Gibbs lineup, hoping that there's a touchdown there, and then go with ASP. You can stack that, sure. But in terms of like single entry, in terms of optimal builds, in terms of creating a nice high floor build, he worries me in that sense, especially against the Bears, where you would argue the better way to attack the Bears is via the run game. So I'm having a tough time paying up for him. Jordan Love I do like as a play, but the only way I'd be playing Jordan Love is if I'm not playing Josh Jacobs in the lineup. Josh Jacobs had 3 touchdowns last week, and I know Jordan Love still had 2 touchdowns in that game. But Jordan Love, again, Christian Watson should have caught a pass. It should have been 3 touchdowns, and the passing yards would have been much better there as well. But Jordan Love wasn't really asked to do much in that game except for some really clutch 3rd down and long conversions. I don't really see a week in which they both correlate, both him and Josh Jacobs, where they're both going off. And so that's my long way of saying, sure, if I'm not playing Josh Jacobs, I probably will end up on Jordan Love. But that's probably the only way I'm getting a Jordan Love. But he is pretty easy to stack this week. Tua, I am struggling to get to. Could he have a good game against the Packers? He certainly could, don't get me wrong. Obviously still has Tyreek Hill there, Jalen Waddle. 4 touchdowns last week against New England, and having a good game against the Raiders. It's encouraging. I don't expect him to go off. This is my biggest worry, though, is that currently I'm not going to have a lot of exposure to him. And he certainly could go off. This offense has looked great lately. I think the whole cold narrative is starting to get to the people in Miami. This feels like a game in which they really want to win, just to fend off that they can't play in the cold type narrative as well. It just feels like that. And so I'm struggling there. That being said, I do like the pricing of Caleb Williams here, guys. I like the fact that he has been getting a lot of design rush attempts. His rush attempts projection props-wise is 5.5. We've seen that he's gotten 6 and 9 the last 2 games. And so if we are getting maybe 3 of those plays being design rushes, we can lock in maybe 2, maybe 3 fantasy points via the run game. I will take that. Now, we're going to need him to score a couple of touchdowns here if he's really going to pay off. But it's more likely for him to pay off this price tag at 5.3 than some of those other quarterbacks are in more difficult matchups. And it is funny, the 2 worst quarterbacks on the slate get the best matchup. And so that's where quarterbacks difficult. They're kind of the last player into my builds as it sits right now. But let's see what it looks like with Caleb Williams in there, guys. We'll put him in there. Receiver-wise, well, we'll do a DST. I don't really care. DST-wise, we'll go Chicago. 3-6 left over. Obviously, that's a little bit too tight. Don't exactly like that. And so one thing you could do is maybe go Theo Johnson and then go to Wicks. I don't think that's a terrible route to go. But I do still want to get to Tucker Kraft. So we'll put him in there. And so instead of playing CeeDee Lamb, if we're playing Caleb Williams, I do want to play another one of his pass catchers. To me, it's a guessing game as to which one it'll be. I'm perfectly fine with either of them. It's a $100 difference. Doesn't really matter. And then we have 5.7 left over. We can go with Jaden Reed, who I do think will have a better game. I'm kind of indifferent about which one of those players I want to get to. We could also go with Wendell Robinson, who I do think has a higher floor as well. That way we can afford to pay up for a better defense. We could easily get to the Cowboys D. I'm perfectly fine with that. We could get to the Giants D. I think they're going to be the most popular defense on the slate. That's something we could go about doing there as well. So this is kind of what I'm looking at right now. Again, don't love the fact that I'm getting to Caleb Williams, but he's the easiest quarterback to stack with his pass catchers because they're all a little bit too cheap. So now let's go ahead and see what the 9-to-5 lineup builder is going to tell us is the most optimal build for the slate as it sits right now. And so as we get into the 9-to-5 lineup builder, do just want to remind you guys that it is available on the 9-to-5 website. You guys can get access to this tool and also the cheat sheets for just $10 a month. When you use the promo code Keep Cashing, though, you'll get 20% off your first month membership. So make the membership $8 for the first month. So guys, looking at it right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it 2 data points to go off if that's what we need to do to make it work. So I'm just kind of rounding up with some of these numbers here. It doesn't really matter here, but giving it 2 data points to go off of, just going to generate so you guys can see what the data is telling us is currently the most optimal lineup. And really what I want to see is if it's agreeing with what I was thinking on the slate or not. And it somewhat is. It does like Rico a little bit. It is trying to get to 2 tight ends. We're not going to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to do tight end, flex, and eligible. It does like to do that because you can lock in another stud. I don't like doing that. So we're going to take that off. Tight end, flex, and eligible. We'll run this again. And so still somewhat of the same path. Again, getting to Jake Ferguson. We'll see if he's active. If he's not, Luke Schoonmaker going to be decent. You could easily just pivot to Tucker Kraft. But it is basically on the same lineup thinking path that I was. Likes Rico as a good value. I'm fine with that. Tyrone Tracy, you could sub in there as well. Perfectly fine with that option as well. That's going to be all for this video, guys. Make sure to give a like and subscribe to the channel. If you guys want access to the tools, again, head on over to 9to5sports.com. Get access to them for just $10 a month. That's going to be all, guys. Happy Thanksgiving. Good luck with your builds on this slate. That's going to be all. And as always, let's keep cashing.